Morning, Lori, and evening, Grace, America. Good Monday to you. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I got a special treat for you now. There's a lot of news going on, especially in Gaza, where the Israelis stand accused of an errant strike on a hospital. The Prime Minister has apologized for what is reported to have caused the death of up to 20 innocents. I'll update that as more news comes along in the course of the day. President in the Oval with the South Korean president. And, of course, we've got lots of political news from over the weekend. But I want to start with Alex Marlow. Alex, the author of this book, Breaking the Law. Alex is also the editor-in-chief of Breitbart. He is a longtime Breitbartian. In fact, he was Andrew Breitbart's first hire, which makes him a favorite of ours here at the Hugh Hewitt Show because Andrew was a friend, and a friend indeed. Welcome, Alex Marlow. Great to have you here. Congratulations on Breaking the Law.
Hugh, thank you so much for having me on the show. And I know you gave it a very gracious and unexpected endorsement on X, the Everything app, which really meant a lot to me. Someone in your shoes with your credibility. I've been listening to you for over 20 years and glad to be colleagues with you on Salem now as well.
Well, I want people to know you have a great podcast on the Salem Podcast Network. And so go find Alex Marlow and just Google for the podcast. You'll be able to go straight to the Salem Podcast Network. But I want to focus on Breaking the Law. First of all, Alex, some background. You have two previous books, Breaking Biden and Breaking the News. You're a child of Los Angeles, Harvard, Westlake, Berkeley. Did you intend this sort of career when you were an undergrad?
I did, actually. Yeah, I went to Berkeley on purpose to kind of cause problems. I was a talk radio junkie growing up, and I was always sort of ambitious and interested in school and trying to be an intellectual one day. And I got hooked on talk radio. Our colleague Larry Elder was my first favorite, and Dennis Prager after that. And I thought that they were just opening my mind to so many things that I wasn't learning in high school. Though I liked my high school education, I learned a lot of important stuff at Harvard Westlake. It was really challenging and less woke than its reputation has become today. By the way, coincidentally, it's gone up in the rankings for national rankings as they've gotten more left. All of a sudden, you start doing better in the national polls. But I had always loved conservatism, conservative ideas, and thought that I was a libertarian at the time, but then I went to Berkeley and I thought this could be really fun because I got in and I thought I could be here, I could be an outspoken conservative and see what happens, and everything happened. It was an amazing journey while I was there, which I could spend hours on that, and I used that to meet Andrew Breitbart and to get involved in the conservative movement at a ground level where I knew nothing about the conservative movement. I was a bit player in it at the start, and I got to be a part of some of the biggest moments in recent history in conservatism by virtue of just showing up.
Yeah, the sooner you begin, the farther you go, and you are a testament to that. I am curious about whether or not you approached a book about the law, like Breaking the Law, with any trepidation that you would. I actually think it's very well written, very well researched. I've been teaching con law for 30 years, so that is my tip of the hat to a layman. Were you at all intimidated by that prospect?
Always. I've never done anything important that I wasn't intimidated by. I don't run arrogant. I run kind of humble. And I think a lot of my success has been born of fear. And I think the fact that I've seen other people climb bigger mountains than I have. So I feel like when there's a mountain in front of me, I feel like I can summit the mountain. But I always approach it as maybe this is the one where it doesn't work out. And I assembled a great team. I've been blessed to have a lot of great researchers who've helped me for all my books, all of them sort of in the Peter Schweitzer investigative research universe that I've been able to borrow from over the years. And I also have some real expert attorneys who are in my corner who've worked for me at Breitbart, and I got pretty decent access to President Trump and his attorney. So I thought with that combination, I could pull it off. But absolutely, of my three books, this was the most intimidating that I took on. And the reviews of it so far are the best of my three. So it seems like it's working out.
Well, Breaking the Law is very, very good. In fact, I will give you credit when I use it. From page 200, the best line in the book is that the United States faces a new existential threat, hundreds of presidents. Now, I have not seen that anywhere else, so I think it's original to Alex Marlow, is it?
I think so. I mean, I write my own book, and I'm very cautious about not plagiarizing. And if I ever pull an idea, I'm meticulous about citing it. As a student of our friend Dennis Prager, I have to. Or else I have to confess it, which I don't want to do. So I'm pretty cautious that if I wrote it, it's me.
Well, I think it's a fabulous way to telegraph the problem of having district court judges issuing injunctions. I don't know if you caught Justice Gorsuch's concurrence last week in the lifting of a stay, where in one paragraph he expressed dismay with federal district court judges ignoring Supreme Court precedent that's squarely on the corners of issues before them. Did you see that, Alex?
I did catch it, and I was actually curious what someone like you, how you would react to it, because I thought we'd gotten past this. I thought they were pretty clear that district court judges preside over a district, and they don't get to have a veto over the executive branch and executive orders. And yet we're still here, where we're still seeing some of the same patterns play out. And I don't fully understand that as a non-lawyer. I don't. How is that possible? It just seems like we solved that, but then maybe we didn't.
Well, if I were teaching right now, I'm not teaching in the summer, and I probably won't be back until spring of 27 in the classroom. I would explain it as judicial frustration can only be expressed in a hortatory way, and then reversing the ruling. You can't punish, you can't sanction. Only the Congress can punish a judge with impeachment, and ignoring precedent isn't exactly an impeachable offense, at least not yet. But it does sum up the problem. The problem is judges don't feel bound by the rule of law, at least judges appointed by President Biden. If indeed they were appointed by President Biden, we don't really know who was nominating some of these late judges. And I don't know that I want impeachment to be a holstered weapon that is brought out too quickly. What do you think on that, Alex Marlow?
Yeah, I'm very cautious about recommending any sort of radical things like that. That I think you've got to have the goods when you're doing these things. And this is something that I recommend consistently throughout the book, that we cannot break the law ourselves when we're opposing these people. And we have to reform the law, and we have to be patient in a lot of ways. And I cite a few examples of where we've been prudent and we've been patient with trying to bring about change. We've been successful. In particular with the Supreme Court, where it was a very radical court for decades, and we were able to slowly, methodically, through winning elections with great appointments, to make it a conservative court again. We do need to take that approach. I don't think we can build Rome in a day here, where we can just impeach all the bad judges and throw them out. Really, the solution is to just electing the best leaders who appoint the best judges. And when there's a judge race in your area, if you're voting for judges, that you have to actually pay attention to those and pick the best ones. That really is the solution. And unfortunately, you got to be patient to do that. But it is something that strikes me as illogical for sure, and probably illegal, that we now have to get essentially we have to avoid the veto of 600 odd judges for President Trump to have an executive order. That strikes me as completely outside of the bounds of the law, the way I've come to understand it. And it would be highly illogical if that's the policy, and yet that is what we've been witnessing the last 7 months.
It is completely outside of the law. And for the benefit of the audience, I will tell you, 2/3 of our district court judges have been appointed by President Biden or Obama, the rest by Presidents George W. Bush and President Trump. And that number will rise over President Trump's second term, but it's still, thank goodness for the Supreme Court. And I don't even mind liberal circuits, because that creates circuit splits, which create the opportunity for the Supreme Court to come in and settle law. Alex, one of the reasons I really like breaking the law. By the way, do you know what the Luntz Law is about promoting a book? The Luntz Law is you've got to say the title of the book 7 times in any segment. So you've got to say breaking the law. As I say in Breaking the Law, on page 30 of Breaking the Law. Because unless you do that, Frank put that in words that work, and I adopted that 20 years ago. And I think it's powerful, because the American attention span is such that you really have to drive it home. Breaking the law, breaking the law. But what I liked about it,
you just sold me a copy of Words That Work, so you're a good.
Well, hey, it is a great book. I think it's Frank's best book, and I've told him that. And some things stick, and that was one. Page 220, The Way Out. The reason I really like Breaking the Law is you and I agree on the way out. Vet, nominate, and confirm or elect good judges. It is that simple. It's patient. It's not quick. It won't satisfy our counter-revolutionary, but it's the only way, really.
Yeah, I love the counter-revolutionaries. I've worked for them at Breitbart. I work with them every day. I just don't see that as viable here. And I feel like that's a way to get ourselves in a lot of trouble, because I think that they will create a lot of trouble for us. We don't even need to do anything wrong for them to cause trouble for us. So we definitely can't try doing stuff that's wrong. So we have to abide by the law. and we have to change it through normal recourse. And I think we can do it with the power of persuasion and with the power of organizing, having the best, most persuasive ideas and candidates, and then making sure once they're in, they stay true to those principles. And when we're nominating people, I want to see a longevity in the conservative movement. I want to see a huge body of work that makes it so that we know they're going to dependably be conservative once they get to the bench. And we need to be very stalwart and steadfast in that regard.
I'm coming right back with Alex Marlow. During the break, you can run over to Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com and order Breaking the Law. You'll be a smarter person for having done so. We'll talk about some of the particulars when we come back. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt with Alex Marlow. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt on this Monday. It's the last full week of summer, but Alex Marlow, editor-in-chief of Breitbart.com and host of the Alex Marlow podcast on the Salem Podcast Network, is with me to talk about his brand new book, Breaking the Law, which is available at Amazon.com, or Breaking the Laws at Barnes & Noble and bookstores everywhere. Alex, the left, I'm quoting you, page 23, the left has never regarded the rule of law as essential. And you write that after recounting the Biden pardons, which truly was, on a couple of levels, not only for who was pardoned, but how they were pardoned with the auto pen. And without a competent president, in my view, my opinion, I'm not a doctor, I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn, but I think we are generally occur that at the end of his term he was not competent. And after promising not to pardon his son, he did so. But do you think the Republican Party is committed to the rule of law?
I do. I think overall they have been. I think one thing that's really interesting is you look at some of the history and you look at, for me, what was the biggest tell that the left was not interested in the rule of law was the way they've treated illegal immigration in my home state of California. Hugh, I know you're out here and you understand it, but we just accepted that you're allowed to break those laws and you're protected. You're actually better than citizens. You get free stuff. You don't have to pay in all the time. You get free school, free healthcare, and you even get the sanctuary protections, which is sort of better than they treat the taxpayers. It's certainly better than I get treated in this state. And once I realized that, I realized the law was just a tool of political power for the left. And then on the right, here's the exception that proves the rule. All the Abrego-Garcia conversation, which is that Trump, nearly violates a court order because the court order came down after Garcia had left the country. And we were obsessed with this for 3 weeks. Well, why are we obsessed with it for 3 weeks? Because there were no examples of Trump actually defying the court orders. If there was, we would have obsessed with one of those where he clear-cut broke the law. So, and I've spoke to President Trump.
He has never done that.
Yeah, he never has.
Now
and
today,
that's intentional. It's intentional.
But today he did sign an executive order purporting to penalize people who burn the federal flag, the United States Old Glory. Now, in 1989, by a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court upheld the right of an individual defendant in Texas to burn the flag. There is an argument that it's not dispositive of all flag burning at all times. Nevertheless, is that the sort of executive order you like to see the president issuing, or is that ignoring the rule of law? It was 5-4, it was 1989. There's a subsequent decision that embroiders a little bit, but generally I've been teaching con law forever, and I just tell people you can burn the flag. Don't worry about it. It's asked and answered. What do you think about the president's EO?
Yeah, this is not what excites me as a free speech guy. I am as close to an absolute, as close to a free speech absolutist, I think, as you can get realistically. So this is not what excites me about President Trump. But what does excite me about him is that he does make us question stuff that we've assumed to be true all the time. And I think that that's a very useful role he plays in public life in America right now. So if this does get appealed and it gets, if the executive order is written in such a way where it gets upheld, that's interesting to me. And if it gets thrown out, that's interesting to me as well. So I'm not too hung up on it either direction, but this isn't something that I, am waving a towel over my head in enthusiasm over it.
Well, that's how I felt about the executive order on children born of parents who entered the country illegally being citizens. It is time to answer that question. So he has teed it up.
Yes.
And he has teed it up in a way that an originalist court will be to answer. And I think they're going to answer, yes, they are citizens, but I do not object to his teeing up a question of first impression. I don't know that this is a question of first impression, so we'll watch it. Next question for you, page 29. The Soros empire spent $40 million to elect its prosecutors and another $77 million sent to 20 leftist NGOs to coordinate and control the prosecutors. I know that's factual. I follow that story closely. What do you think is the end that they are aiming for? To what end, Alex Marlow, is the Soros octopus doing this?
Yeah, this is the where the opinion kicks in. I offer the facts as much as I can. I have the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sources in citations. I try to go as mainstream as I can with the citations, so people who want to follow along, they can. But I feel like Soros is a chaos agent. I feel like he doesn't like this country. I don't think he likes what America stands for, and I do think that he's figured out a way to very easily erode the integrity of our cities, make it so that they are not cities on a hill, that they are places of chaos, of crime, of depression. I mean, I live adjacent to Los Angeles. I go down to LA. It's always very striking how the city is kind of a bummer. You're bummed out when you're there. The shopping is great. The food is great, but the people aren't very happy. I think he likes that stuff. I think that undermines America. And I think that's pretty much what his goal is. And a lot of left-wing people who have spent way too much time at university are very happy to go see him do it.
Let's spend some time on that. Last time I was in LA for a long period of time, I went up to Skid Row with Judge David Carter, which is the zombie apocalypse. There's 70,000 people living on the streets of LA, and people don't really know what it's like until you go there. And I went there with the federal judge, so I've got the federal marshals and all that kind of stuff. But it was staggering. I did the nightly news in LA for 10 years, and there was a Skid Row, but it wasn't anything like this. Why would anyone want the country to be that way? Why would George Soros hate the United States?
I don't know that one. That is a one where I would have to maybe I could do a breaking Soros. So someone should do it. I mean, it seems like it's probably been written somewhere, but I don't know why he dislikes us so much. It seems like what he stands for is for every anti-American cause imaginable, every anti-Israel cause imaginable. He tends to put money into that as well. But what you note is very striking is that this should be a beautiful, iconic city. We all have a picture of LA in our mind. But you can go to the Ritz-Carlton or the JW Marriott in downtown LA and this gorgeous, opulent hotel, and right across the street, literally across the street, there'll be a homeless tent city. The La Brea Tar Pits, which is just an iconic, iconic history with an iconic history museum attached. All this rich history that's there, a place that I used to go peacefully as a child to learn about the history of this country, or prehistory, really. And then there's a tent city there now. And then we just accept it, is that that's okay. MacArthur Park, which is run over by illegal alien drug dealers in downtown LA. I got a beautiful park by my house. Do you know why it's beautiful? There's a little fence around it. And you can't get in unless you get a little key fob. And then, so it's a beautiful place. My kids can play there. You can't play in normal parks in LA. And we're okay with it. We're completely comfortable with it because our brain has been totally warped with this notion that Republicans are always bad.
Well, let me divert from breaking the law for just a moment. I'd like you to write Breaking Gavin. And not because I dislike him on a personal level. I think I actually have a grudging respect for his political chops in the blue bubble. He knows how to run in San Francisco and in California at large. Do you think he is at all acceptable to the United States as a whole? I imagine a Gavin Newsom, J.D. Vance race in 3 years. What do you think happens then?
Yeah, I never underestimate him politically. I've been in California most of my life, aside from about 8 years or so in the D.C. area. And so I followed Newsom's career the whole time, and he really is good. He knows how to message very effectively, and he knows how to talk to conservatives when he's talking to them. And I don't think he's as committed of a leftist as the way he governs, but his biggest weakness is his policy accomplishments are non-existent. Traffic has gotten worse. It's gotten more expensive. We had a surplus and it became a deficit in the state. Crime has gotten worse. Just the lifestyle feels like it's gotten worse. Half the city burned down in LA on his watch. So his record is terrible. We have the worst airport in the world. Los Angeles International Airport is ranked the worst in the world. So what is he known for on an accomplishment level? More men.
Oh, Alex, he's going to run on the train to nowhere. He's going to run on the bullet train, of course.
My favorite.
I'll be right back with Alex Marlow. That's a joke. It's a joke, people. You're driving in LA. You just went off the road. That was a joke. I'll be right back with Alex Marlow. Stay tuned. I'm back with Alex Marlow on the Hugh Hewitt Show. If you like Alex, and I can't believe you don't, remember he has a podcast with the Salem Podcast Network, the Alex Marlow Show. Alex, I want to now get to the Lawfare because you do a very extensive cataloging in terms that a layman can understand of what happened to Donald Trump from the time that he won the election, because it began not long thereafter with the appointment of Special Counsel Mueller, right through today. It continues today. Of all of these, I have my favorite for nominating as the worst example of lawfare. What is your nomination?
It's a great question because the biggest one is the appointment of Jack Smith, which was unconstitutional, and he was allowed to use the power of the DOJ in a job that didn't exist to harass Donald Trump in two different ways with two different cases. And it leaked constantly to the Washington Post. He was clearly a partisan guy, and the job wasn't even real, and it just took 18, 19 months for us to figure that out. So that's the highest consequence one. I would say, though, the worst examples are Letitia James in New York, who was so in your face about that she was going to hold Trump accountable, that for what? No one knew. She was just going to go get him. And then she invented a crime that did not exist. And then this was in a civil court, so it's not supposed to be a criminal court, but she treated it like a crime. And then he got assessed a cruel and unusual punishment, which I wrote in the book. This is a clear Eighth Amendment violation, and we learned last week that it was thrown out for exactly that reason. She's the worst offender in it. But I have to say, Hugh, and I know there's a long answer, but I have to say maybe my favorite was still the E. Jean Carroll case. Because
that's mine. All right, we agree again.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead, tell me why, because I'll tell you why when you're done. It's absurd.
Every detail is absurd, and the more you read it, I have to say, if you have my sense of humor, reading the first few pages of the Eugene Carroll chapter in Breaking the Law, I was laughing writing it, and I shouldn't be, because all horrible, and it's horrible as it happened in our country. But I couldn't believe some of the details. They kept getting more ridiculous. How her case was exactly a Law and Order episode plot, and she was a Law and Order fan. How she had this dress, and she claimed she had this dress with Trump's DNA, and but she wouldn't turn it over. And the court didn't demand it. How there was this Anderson Cooper interview that she did where she said rape is sexy. And then the judge wouldn't allow for that to be played in court. And that she had written previously about sex in Bergdorf Goodman, which is where she claimed Trump had stalked her. And then this debate about whether or not she's Trump's type. She's clearly not Trump's type, which is relevant, but we're supposed to act like that's not relevant. Every detail was ridiculous. And then you learn it was the concoction of George Conway, and with the funding of Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn billionaire who loves Joe Biden. That's how this happened. You can't believe this took place in America, and it was two cases.
Yeah, I think eventually all of this will be thrown out, like Jack Smith was thrown out, like Letitia James was thrown out. I believe the E. Jean Carroll verdict will be thrown out because it's truly a scar on the idea that we have a legal system here with some standards, because it was so absurd, but it's also my favorite. Now let's dive into some very good reporting on your part. Page 123, the Department of Injustice. I worked at Justice long ago and far away as a special assistant to William French Smith and then Ed Meese. So I know what the Deputy Attorney General does. I know what the Associate Attorney General does. I don't know Lisa Monaco or Vanita Gupta. How did you figure out the org chart, and how did you come to the conclusion that it was the DAG and the AAG who are running this thing?
It's a great question because it's a simple answer. Donald Trump himself, he said he was under the impression that these were the people who were actually calling the shots at the DOJ. And it works with me logically. I'm a pure Occam's razor guy, Hugh. So I always go with what's the most logical thing. And so how did Merrick Garland get atop the DOJ? Merrick Garland seems like a nice guy. He doesn't seem like a dumb guy. And he is not a radical. And he was up for that Supreme Court seat, which he would have gotten confirmed had Mitch McConnell allowed for a vote on it. And so you give him that as sort of a booby prize for not getting to be on the Supreme Court. He's completely out of his depth because he comes, even though a bright guy and a nice guy, he goes from having an office of 10 people to having an office of well over 100,000. He can't handle that. But he's got these people like Lisa Monaco and Vanita Gupta who are seasoned veterans of the DOJ and of the Biden apparatus in general, who are purely activists to the point where Vanita Gupta, who was the number 3 at the DOJ at the time, she even had to apologize to conservatives for some of the things she'd done in the past when she was up for the job. And these people have a lot of time on their hands. They're clearly committed partisans. And now they can operate with this layer of cover from Merrick Garland and Joe Biden as well. And then you see the lawfare starting to materialize against Trump, and all of it adds up logically. I present some of this to President Trump. I talked to him about it, and he said, yeah, I think you got it. I think it's Monaco. I think Monaco is the one who is really controlling it. And she worked very closely with Andrew Weissman, who is part of the Mueller probe and is the #1 lawfare enthusiast on cable news on MSNBC. I don't know if you've run into him over the years, Hugh, maybe you have.
No.
But
I've never met him, and I don't want to meet him because I think he's an embarrassment to every Department of Justice lawyer who ever worked there and tried to do so in furtherance of the idea of the rule of law. I'll be right back for a final segment with Alex. Don't go anywhere except over to Amazon to get Breaking the Law. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. Alex Marlow has written a really super book on the 4 years of lawfare against President Trump when he was out of power, and indeed the roots of that lawfare that were planted in the first term. Unfortunately, by Jeff Sessions' bad decision to recuse himself and Rod Rosenstein's decision to appoint Robert Mueller as a special counsel. But it's the next special counsel, Jack Smith, that I want to close our conversation with about Alex today. You point out he prosecuted Edwards and botched it, prosecuted Governor McDonnell and botched it, he prosecuted Rick Renzi. He has a long history of being a political prosecutor. If you really wanted to assure the public that you were not going to the bottom shelf, back expiration date there, you would not pick Jack Smith and bring him back from The Hague. Why do you think they did it? Do you think they knew he was a fanatic?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. And this is one of the key reveals, I think, that this was a political persecution. It was two persecutions. There were two Jack Smith cases, both of which I hope I have helped make sense of some of those to people who pick up the book. But you're correct to know that he was one of the guys who left the country when Trump won the first time. He's one of the people. There's so few of them. They talk a big game, but he actually left. He went to The Hague, and he's at the kangaroo court over there, riding his bicycle around. And he's got a wife who's an activist, a Democrat as well. And he gets picked at the exact moment the Democrats lose the midterms. And this is very relevant because the Democrats were in panic mode after they lost the midterm election, because that meant the J6 kangaroo prosecution was going to end. That whole committee was going to end, which was how they were controlling the news narrative against President Trump, because Republicans were going to come in, they were going to wind that down. So they made some very dramatic moves to try to amp up the lawfare in the ways they could help it. One of them was appointing Jack Smith, who immediately started leaking to the press stuff that was negative about Donald Trump. A couple other key things there. Nathan Wade in the Fani Willis case in Georgia was starting to make routine White House visits for 8 hours at a time. Wade was the family attorney who somehow got put on a RICO case and was now making White House visits. At the exact same time, Matthew Colangelo, who was at the time the number 3 at the DOJ, was getting sent to Alvin Bragg's office in Manhattan, which is a massive demotion to try to ramp up the Trump prosecution there. So clearly there is deep coordination, with Jack Smith being a major player in this, to try to get Trump after the Democrats were about to lose their J6 committee.
So, Alex, do you think the Democrats have learned? And this is a good place to kind of wrap up. The Democrats are meeting in Minneapolis as we speak. In fact, they might be listening to us on AM 1280 right now as they drive home from the convention center. They began with a land acknowledgement, and then their new chairman, Ken Martin, gave a cliche-ridden dictator-in-chief. He talked about all the standard talking points of the hard left. Do you think they will at least learn that lawfare is not a weapon you want to pick up lightly?
No, they never learn, and they won't learn here. They're going to ramp it up, and that's a great thing for me to prompt, because they're building their lawfare infrastructure. One of the things that I learned while researching the book is David Brock, who founded Media Matters, who I'm sure has written a lot of nice stuff over the years about you, Hugh, which they've written nothing nice about. Yeah, so what he's doing now is he's got this thing, the 65 Project, where he's trying to get attorneys who represent people like President Trump and the J6 prisoners and anyone like that, trying to get them disbarred. Not that they can't work at a nice white shoe law firm. They're trying to get them disbarred. So the lawfare apparatus is only growing. They take it very seriously, and they'll never stop until they have all the political power.
But about David Brock, I interviewed him long ago and far away when I was a weekend host for KFI. He came to my studio in Orange County. And he had that weird haircut then. Now it's the color of my hair. It's absolutely white, but it's just odd. I think he's lost cachet. Don't you think he's kind of viewed with a side eye, by people in the control room of the Democratic Party? He's just not very effective.
From your lips to God's ears, but I would tell you, John Eastman would beg to differ on that one, because he got John Eastman his law license suspended, and there are going to be a bunch of others who he's working on day and night to work on that. So, and he's a donor darling, continues to be. So the donors are going to keep emptying their pockets for the lawfare apparatus, and they're so well funded, they're so well capitalized. I introduced people to new billionaires who they probably have never heard of, who are funding elements of it in breaking the law, and it's just one of these things where never underestimate them. They look so weak and lame right now, Hugh. We all know it, and we love to see it. But I don't underestimate them until we have a much bigger margin than we have now.
If we had more time, I will go into one more point with you. I would tell we would go through Chapter 8, mapping the superstructure line by line, but I want to close this way. Mark Levin was my guest last week talking about his new book, On Power. In it, he writes that believers in negative power, meaning the left, will use positive power, meaning democracy, to advance their negative power. You write the left hates democracy. I don't think so. I think they like it to get power, but they don't like being found out by people like Alex Marlow. What do you think of that assessment?
I think they live by any means necessary credo, and they're trying to get power. And if they can tout democracy while rigging their own primaries, while trying to rig general elections by trying to make it so that the standard bearer of the other party is not on the ballot. I go through so many of the elections that they manipulated from the party level and not letting the voters, the people decide. I think it's pretty clear that they regard it at best as a tool to obtain power. I just think that when you think about the way the left operates, starting from the premise they don't like law and order, they would prefer chaos in our streets. We're seeing it in D.C. They're taking a pro-criminal line in D.C.
Yeah, they are
pro-criminal now. And it's one of these things, how could you be pro-criminal and then also pro-democracy? It doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense to their emerging demographic base either. Alex Marlow, let's finish with a plug for your podcast. How often do you do it, and what's it primarily about? It's on the Salem Podcast Network.
Thanks, you, and I'd love to return the favor over there. You've been so generous, particularly with that tweet. Really made me feel good, and it's nice to have such wonderful colleagues at Salem. I'm podcasting 5 days a week, and it's a new show. I try to keep it pretty tight for all of you, give you what's the latest I'm hearing from the Breitbart newsroom, and then some of the best guests in the world, I would say. And if I don't have a great guest, then you're not getting a guest, and I'll just run down the news with you. We have a great time making fun of the left, and I think giving you some compelling arguments about what's happening in the news.
In the great debate about how long the ideal podcast is, what is Alex Marlow's opinion? How long?
Oh, this is so fantastic because I love the 3-hour shows if people can sustain it, and sometimes nice to get a bite-sized quick show. But I run around 45 minutes. I feel like that's a good.
That's exactly. Bingo. Yeah, 45 minutes to an hour if it's really entertaining. Alex Marlow, great to make your acquaintance by television and radio. I look forward to many more. The book is Breaking the Law. The podcast is The Alex Marlow Show. It's over at the Salem Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you go and get it. Alex, thank you. Follow him, by the way, at Alex. What's the X handle? Alex, is there an initial in there, or is it Alex Marlow?
No, Alex Marlow. Easy. Thanks, you. You're the best.
Easy. Alex Marlow on X. Make it a follow and come right back to the end of this hour. Hugh Hewitt Show.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.